Hello and welcome to World Insight with Tian coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, U.S. President Donald Trump heads to a NATO summit in Brussels. Can Trump safeguard the alliance that he long ago labeled as obsolete? In the third episode of our series AI and EU, where we will learn about China's appetite for robots. We start today's show with the NATO summit in Brussels. U.S. President Donald Trump attended this meeting for the very first time since taking office, despite his critique of the military alliance. Just months ago, he reiterated America's support to NATO and secured NATO's promise to join the anti-ISIS coalition.
A first visit to the city U.S. President Donald Trump used to call a hellhole. And many still remember his unfriendliness to NATO.
When I talk about NATO, we're talking about tremendous amounts of money that we put in. Now we're defending countries, and we're not getting reimbursed anywhere near the cost of doing it. So I was on CNN, and they asked me the big question, and they said, well, what do you think of that? I said, it's obsolete, and it's costing too much.
After months of on-the-job learning of the position of U.S. President, his attitude to NATO has somewhat changed. He took back the word obsolete when meeting Stoltenberg last month, but insists on NATO members paying their fair share. And NATO has no objection to the money issue.
In 2014, all allies agreed to spend more and better on defense, including moving towards investing 2% of GDP on defense within a decade. Today, we will take steps to keep up the momentum. We will agree to develop national plans every year. This will set out how NATO allies intend to meet their pledge, so that we continue to match words with action.
The past few decades have seen NATO struggling to find relevance for itself since this enemy, the Warsaw Pact, dissolved in early 1990s. However, it didn't mark a safer era for Europe. On Monday this week, an explosion in British city Manchester killed 22. Just 3 months before, a car and knife rampage in London killed 4. Last month in Paris, a gunshot killed a policeman. Also in April, a cargo ran into crowds in Stockholm, killing 4. While in March 2016, 30 died in an explosion in Brussels. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said NATO agreed on joining U.S. anti-ISIS coalition. Many believe counter-terrorism not only serves the security interests of the NATO members, but also provides a perfect reason for the group to stay relevant.
So how are things shaping up after the NATO summit with President Trump? Let's go to our panelists right now in Beijing. We have 2 of them here. Cui Hongjian, Director of Department of European Studies at the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome, sir. Also joining us here in Beijing, Einar Tangen, CGTN's Economic and Political Affairs Commentator. Welcome as well. Joining us in Warsaw, invited Mikhail Baranowski, who is the director of the German Marshall Fund's Warsaw office. He focused on transatlantic relations. Welcome. And also in London, we are welcoming Ms. Danica Renova, who is a research associate at the European Leadership Network, who focuses on NATO-EU collaboration and transatlantic burden sharing. A lot of descriptions of your job, but I hope those job descriptions help us to understand the description of natures between the United States and the other members of NATO. Let me begin with you, Ms. Renova. Are you satisfied really with the current result of the summit so far?
Well, in 2014, allies pledged to work towards increasing their defense spending to 2%. And at this special meeting, I believe we'll see a lot more progress on that. We'll see 2 topics being discussed: counterterrorism and, of course, fairer burden sharing. And I believe this is going to be an important signal sent by the European allies to President Trump that they are addressing his concerns.
Really? An important signal. Is it really going to be, Mr. Baranowski?
Well, this is of course President Trump's first visit to Brussels, to Europe, and his first NATO meeting. And the expectations are high. The expectations, and really a priority number one for President there is to reassure the allies and reconfirm U.S. commitment to Article 5 of common defense across the alliance. And there is no doubt that he will certainly do that. The two other points will focus on the burden sharing. It's a sort of a code name for the fact that the United States is right now paying a much greater part of the alliance common total budget, because United States military spending is about 73% of if we pooled military budgets of the whole alliance, and it's frankly not a sustainable position, and that has to change, and it will certainly change over the next 8 years or so.
Well, before we go to our other guest here in Beijing, I do want to follow up a little bit, Mr. Beverovsky. If you could be brief here, I want your opinion rather than facts, because we all know the facts. At this point, we heard obsolete, not obsolete, the flip-flopping attitudes coming from President Trump. Of course, he met already with some leaders of NATO, and yet not necessarily giving a very public statement about exactly what he has in mind now. So do you expect other flip-flop in the very near future?
No, I don't expect any more changes. Okay. We like where we are, so NATO not obsolete. Okay. And you know, I'm tongue-in-cheek, I'm joking here a little bit, but this is of course the position of the President of the United States, but it's also very much the position of the entire administration, Congress, and the American people. So this is what the United States is committed to, and it's great to hear this commitment from President Trump, and surely he will reiterate this in Brussels. This is probably the predominant, most important goal of this meeting.
Mr. Tangen, this is no joke at all.
So to say, on the dotted line under Article 5.
Mr. Tangen, this is no joke at all. In fact, of course, Mr. Beverovsky is very, very humorous in expressing it. Mr. Tangen here in Beijing, this is no joke. You're originally coming from the United States, but we understand this has been the very basic fabric of the U.S. relations with the rest of the world. This transatlantic relationship. Over the time, it changes, but will it still be, and NATO, part of it?
Well, the question is, what is the need of NATO? NATO was formed literally to contain Russia. Now, if that is still the optimum phrase, then we go back to 2007 and Putin's speech to the Munich conference, where he questioned this. Why are you continuing to do this type of situation? So getting back to this, I think we have not seen the last of the flip-flops. I do think he will ratify Article 5, but be prepared for him to be pushing very hard on the economics.
We talk about NATO, you even mentioned about its history. It is worthwhile to take a look at the history of NATO. Of course, originally, it is a relic of the Cold War. April 4th, 1949, 12 founding members, including the US, UK, France, and Canada, signed the North Atlantic Treaty to provide collective security against the Soviet Union. 1952, Greece and Turkey joined. 1957, first NATO summit in Paris. 10 years later, NATO headquarters moved to Brussels. 1982, Spain joined the alliance as well. 12 new members joined NATO since German reunification in 1990. A lot has changed, though, I have to say, Mr. Cui here in Beijing. So, originally a relic of the Cold War. Then it said our roles has evolved after Cold War ended, and yet Russia is saying, well, you guys are still directing at me because look at what is going on right now in the Baltic Sea. Exactly, what is the role of NATO from your perspective now?
Yeah, as we know, since the end of Cold War, I think it has been a very, very hard struggle for NATO to try to look for some more reason for its survival after the Cold War. Because as we know now, even for some expanding, strategic concepts for NATO, and also maybe to some degree a kind of a globalization of NATO. As we know now, it has developed so many called partners or friendship with some other countries beyond or out of Europe. So I think, yes, it gives a very, very serious question, not only to Russia or some other, even for some member states of NATO. If we look at it, especially the public opinion from some European countries, they are very, very, they don't understand what's the reason why NATO needed to be continued. And also, of course, at the same time, as I understand it, for United States, for some European countries, they still need an organization like NATO. Once there is Russia, even there is not a Soviet Union, but of course, to some other, to a lot of degree that maybe for NATO, it's a try to show a kind of maybe a power of Western countries in the world.
Okay, Mr. Baranowski, keep on waving his head. Obviously, he does not necessarily agree with you. Mr. Baranowski, your points here, briefly.
Thank you very much. No, I certainly not agree with the point that NATO is a relic of Cold War that lost its relevance and that there is no support in the alliance for NATO. I mean, in fact, the opposite is true. And most recent public opinion poll by Pew Research Center, released just a couple days ago, is showing an increase of support for NATO, really across the alliance. Not equally, but across the alliance. NATO is certainly evolving. There are different threats to the North Atlantic area. Terrorism is clearly on the rise, but Russia is certainly not out. I mean, we can't forget about the fact that Russian troops are still very much in Ukraine, that Russia annexed Crimea, and that it's threatening NATO member states in the Baltics.
So you're saying, Mr.
Baranowski,
I just want to make sure we understand your point very clearly. So your point is Russia is still a big job of NATO right now. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's one of two big jobs.
Very good. Let's go to Mr. Tangen.
Yeah, but let's be clear about this.
Okay, all right, let's go to Mr. Tangen.
I understand the position of my colleague who's sitting in London representing Poland, and I think it is an asymmetrical in terms of threat. Poland obviously feels this a lot more than, let us say, France. So there's a real division in there. But clearly, Donald Trump is trying to refocus all of his efforts towards anti-terrorism. He's trying to recraft NATO in his own desires, and that is a shift away from Russia. We've already heard that he's had some disagreements about the position of NATO and Russia towards what he considers the main threat, which is terrorism.
Very interesting there. I have to go to you, Ms. Renova, for that very hard question. If you can, very clearly state your opinion. So what can be the role of NATO? It is supposed to be about common defense. We all understand that. That's the very fundamental principle of NATO. But then, will the common defense about whom and against whom? Is it about Russia mainly, or is it about the terrorism, or is it about any potential threat that yet members not know? What do you think, Ms. Renova?
NATO is trying to balance the threat perceptions of its member states. Clearly, there are differences. Yes, collective defense is the core principle, but we are also forgetting that NATO has taken up new responsibilities. It has been fighting international terrorism, not just recently, but since 2001. It has taken up responsibilities on the high seas, fighting piracy, and of course we are seeing cyber warfare picking up more and more pace in the discussions since last year the alliance adopted a position and recognized it as a new front. So I don't think we should limit ourselves to saying that the alliance has one single purpose now. We just all agree that the alliance is evolving and is broadening its focus.
I understand, Mr. Renova, you just want to be diplomatic here. Well, maybe you want to be diplomatic here, but the thing is, you have to prioritize for any organization, for any country, and for any task. So what is the priority now for NATO? That is my question, Ms. Renova.
Well, this is something that we will see by the end of today.
That's a smart answer, I have to say. Mr. Tangen, go ahead.
The question is, do you want to be spending 2% of your GDP on trying to find what your relevancy is? And at this point, given the world economic situation, I think that's not the solution.
All right, Mr. Baranowski, what about your colleagues' idea? By the end of the day, we will know, or you already know at this point, that all the politicians attending those meetings should also know your opinion. What is it?
Look, NATO can walk and chew gum at the same time. We do not have to choose between protecting only from the threats from the east or only from the threats from the south and terrorism. In fact, this is not a diplo speech. This is the consensus that is present in the alliance for a long time. It's not only something that happened since Russia's annexation of Crimea. This was clear that we have to do both. Yes, President Trump is focused on anti-terrorism operation, but at the same time, U.S. is placing a large number of troops in Poland to counter and to deter Russia. So U.S. is doing this at the same time. You can walk and chew the gum, so to say.
Mr. Cui, well, the leaders, according to Mr. Baranowski, inside the NATO summit are chewing their guns and they were walking their talks. What about that? I mean, in the future, that priority choice that you see?
Yeah, as I know, that now, yes, I understand the expectation from some European countries and also
Don't
from
be diplomatic, Mr. Cui. None of the others are diplomatic, so go ahead, just say your opinion.
So now the question is, just like the gentleman mentioned, that yes, now United States did some, position in Central and Eastern Europe, but we should not forget it is from Obama administration, not from Trump administration. We can find a very, very clear gap of this attitude from the former American government and the current one to the Russia. So I think that's the reason why at this moment Mr. Trump will try to change the focus from eastern of Europe to the south to Europe.
Do you
from the
NATO?
Russia to the anti-terrorism.
Okay. Do you think, though, Mr. Kangan, that the Washington bureaucracies will also share the same opinion as Mr. Cui just said about President Trump? Meanwhile, the leaders of the other members of NATO would also share about that priority about so-called anti-ISIS with President Trump. That is exactly the focus, isn't it? And that is also the concerns, curiosity, and excitement of this summit.
I know, but excitement is not necessarily a good thing in diplomacy.
No.
And quite frankly, what we have here is a very interesting move. NATO has directly signed on to going into the war against ISIS. Now, all 28 members have been in supporting roles of this anti-terrorism. But by having NATO do it, what happens if there is an incident with Russia? Then you have a situation where you have two powers colliding directly. I think this was an ill-timed and also ill-conceived idea to just put NATO at the front of this, because all you're doing is moving the battleground from Eastern Europe to the Middle East.
Ms. Renova, I know we all have different views, but the thing is, what are likely to be the factor that's going to finally have a say on the future of NATO? That is the most important thing. Is money necessarily going to be the factor? I mean, right now, Washington urging everybody to pay 2% of GDP. Please, you guys put in your gold here as well while you're doing the so-called common defense. Will that be achieved? If not achieved, will NATO still relevant to the U.S.? Meanwhile, or another choice, will U.S. rather will decide the overall agenda of NATO directly to the so-called anti-terrorism?
NATO will remain relevant to the US simply because it is not just about projecting military power, it's about uniting Europe and the US around a common goal. And it is not just about a simple zero-sum game of interest, it's about values, and the alliance stands for those.
Values,
when it comes to the
values, I have to cut you short, Mr. Nova. That's exactly the point. Mr. Trump is saying, you know what, at least in his campaign, he doesn't care that much about the values. He cares about jobs, he cares about pragmatic relations. So, Mr. Baranowski, values still matter? Will that still be the fabric holding all the members of NATO together? Is the US already taking a very different path, let's just say, from the traditional Europe?
No, I would not say that there is a divergent of paths between United States and Europe. There is an element of I won't hide that there is a lot of people in Europe who are looking at the campaign and first months of President Trump's administration with only with approval. But a couple points. One is this meeting in person is partially designed to talk about these values and work out differences and see if the differences are really there if you strip away the rhetorics of the campaign. And in fact, we have seen some good developments, including meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister May, also the meeting between him and Chancellor Merkel, despite of some of the reports went pretty well. And people also on this side of the Atlantic know that America is more than one president. And there is very much a strong commitment to the values of the alliance that held us together for the last 70 years. So this is not going away anytime soon.
Right.
And NATO's relevance is also connected to the threat that is still there, very much there, both from terrorism from the south, but also from the east, like we discussed earlier.
Mr. Baranovsky, I have to report to you while you were talking. There's another gentleman also waving their head as you were earlier. So, Mr. Tangen, what about your point? Before you begin, let me just narrow it down for you. Are we talking about a Europe and the United States taking on very different paths likely in the near future as a result of this presidency? Or are we talking about that Europe, is it still relevant anymore much to the United States when it comes to its overall strategy globally?
All right, let's put the cards on the table. Europe is the U.S.'s greatest competitor. Face it, they make everything we do. They have Airbus, we have Boeing.
Well, that has been
you can't,
for some time.
With jobs, everything comes out on the table. It's going to be there. It's already there. Trump is meeting Merkel. But I think if you look at the optics of this, the white knuckle handshake between Trump and Macron, where Trump tried to kind of muscle him, and then Macron fought back, and in the end, it was Trump who had to kind of withdraw his hand.
What are you trying to say here?
I'm trying to say that there is a divergence, and there's no question about it. Hiding behind polite talk won't change the reality. People are wondering exactly what the purpose of NATO is and why so much money should be going to it, and what has it accomplished. It's fine to say 2% of the European GDP is being asked to be put towards this. What is the value?
But on the other hand, Mr. Tangen,
and there are no values attached.
We have to admit, okay.
Where's Turkey and Aragon?
Campaigning Trump is different from the governing Trump that we all know. And you have also seen President Trump, after swaying somewhat, have been going back in different degree on the original foreign policies of the United States toward different regions, Middle East included at this point. So, Mr. Tangen, while you are arguing so many things in different directions, but probably President Trump is going back to the traditional path.
If anybody can figure out what Donald Trump is going to do next, they are unique.
I wouldn't debate with you about that point. So anyway, Mr. Cui, what about you?
Yes, I think that, but of course now we need to understand what's the new situation, not only for the United States and for Europe, because now not only because of Brexit, not only because of Mr. Trump, now there is a very big debate within European Union is how could Europe get some more strategic autonomy, which means that European countries should be prepared for a situation, maybe a new situation, maybe a new normal, that it should have its own, regional security arrangement without United States.
That was debated. How strong was that debate, Ms. Ranova, and how matured has that debate become? How is that debate likely to relate to the result, as you said, Ms. Ranova, the end of the day, today?
Well, at the moment, we are looking at the EU and NATO coordinating. They've very much focused on complementarity of their capabilities, and the discussion should be focused on how developing the different capabilities, be it within the NATO European pillar or be it through the EU's own coordinated review on capabilities to enhance Europe's ability to project influence and to defend itself. It is not an either-or. It should be about the synergies between the two organizations. It should be about establishing a common narrative on the threats that both organizations have to face. So it is not an exclusion, but in fact an inclusion of the two organizations working together towards a common goal.
Well, you talk about synergy. President Trump is also probably touching on that topic. He's right now talking
and extremists. And yes, losers. They are losers. Wherever they exist in our societies, we must drive them out and never, ever let them back in. This call for driving out terrorism is a message I took to a historic gathering of Arab and Muslim leaders across the region, hosted by Saudi Arabia. There I spent much time with King Solomon, a wise man who wants to see things get much better rapidly. The leaders of the Middle East have agreed at this unprecedented meeting to stop funding the radical ideology that leads to this horrible terrorism all over the globe. My travels and meetings have given me renewed hope that nations of many faiths can unite to defeat terrorism, a common threat to all of humanity. Terrorism must be stopped in its tracks, or the horror you saw in Manchester and so many other places will continue forever. You have thousands and thousands of people pouring into our various countries and spreading throughout. And in many cases, we have no idea who they are. We must be tough, we must be strong, and we must be vigilant. The NATO of the future must include a great focus on terrorism and immigration, as well as threats from Russia and on NATO's eastern and southern borders. These grave security concerns are the same reason that I have been very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance in saying that NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations.
And that's exactly President Trump talking about some of the points that we have just mentioned. He was talking in Brussels during the NATO summit over there. So we only have 2 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. Shall we, every one of you, 30 seconds. Let's wrap it up. You heard him. You talk about the priorities as they seem to you. What about the eventual result? What can we expect, and what might be the impact of it? Ms. Renova, please, from you.
Well, we have already seen progress on the fight against international terrorism. They're establishing a new fusion cell in the headquarters in Brussels. We mentioned fairer burden sharing. Allies are planning to submit their plans by the end of this year for the ways in which they try to reach that target. And of course, he mentioned Russia. And I think we have seen agreement across the entire alliance on the priorities for the next couple of years.
Okay, Mr. Cui, 30 seconds.
There are already, so many common words or so many strategic concepts by NATO. But now the question, I think, for the future for NATO is, firstly, for this European allies, they need to still to keep their keep their feeling about how about this unpredictability of Mr. Trump, and especially how is the real, fact of these relations between U.S. and Russia.
Okay.
I think it will be very big reasons for why we should change the focus from east to the south.
Okay, 20 seconds only left for you. Unfortunately, Mr. Berowski.
What we have just heard in this clip is perfectly a continuation of what the United States has been saying for the last 70 years. well, shorter for the alliance, and that's fine as long as we can stay on script for common defense and addressing both terrorism and threat from Russia. We are doing perfectly fine.
All right, Mr. Tangen, final
You'll never
word.
defeat ideology that fuels terrorism with guns. The only way you can do it with is stronger ideology, and this Donald Trump has said he's not interested in these types of values.
Well, very interesting situation, I have to say. Thank you so much for the four of you. Ainer Tangen, Cui Hongjian, Miguel Baranovsky, and Denitsa Ranova. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being with us. And you are watching World Insight with Tian Wei, coming to you live on CGTN. Still to come on our program. In the third episode of our series, AI and You, I visit the platform Robot Speak, where I even chat with a Chinese-built robot Yoby to see what her life is like. 好，我可以帮你带走吗？
可以，快来。
Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with Tian Wei, coming to you live from Monday to Friday on CGTN. Some say it is a battle of brains between human and also the latest development of technology. And it seems like artificial intelligence has triumphed over the world's #1 Go player, Ke Jie, in their second game. This means the program is victorious, some say, in the best-of-3 series. Ke, in his first game on Tuesday, played more aggressively compared to his usual steady strategy. The program won the first game by half a point, which is the closest margin possible. On Friday, the program will be tested further by a team made up of 5 players. Although AlphaGo has won 2 sets, the final human-computer war, some say, on Saturday is definitely worth a look. From the latest Go chess to the global robot industry, it has witnessed a huge development over the years. Its market size keeps on expanding, with governments and multinational companies actively investing in the industry. The global robot market sales in 2016 were about $20 billion US. Industrial robots dominated 2/3 of that market, and among the sales, 1/3 were from industrial robot sales in China. China has become the world's largest industrial robot market as well. The Chinese government is now working on a series of policies to support and guide the industry. To get a glimpse of how the robotics industry has been growing in China and beyond, I went to an organization called Robot Speak here in Beijing. It's a platform where global high-end technology experts converge on that specific one. I talked to Dr. Gan Zhongxue, who is the president of Ningbo Institute of Intelligent Manufacturing Industry. And of course, he also showed me a lot of robots which are under development over there. Dr. Gan, good to see you.
Glad to see you again. Last time you came in here for the seminar.
Yes, indeed. It was great.
Yes, and here we opened the first Chinese called Robot Speak. All of the researchers or the scientists over the world to join us to give the speech and analyze some trends.
It was terrific. It was terrific. And today I have an exclusive.
Okay, this is the two is delivery drone and for the logistic system. Okay, and this one for the wall climbing.
Okay, wall climbing.
Yes.
I see.
Okay, this is one for the detection system for the flying robot.
So when there is a crisis such as like earthquake or natural disasters, people can take videos from the helicopter.
Okay.
And this can, in a way, be thrown down from the helicopter. Whoever on the ground pick it up, video inside.
You're smart.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
I have to because I'm with a scientist, right?
Okay. Yeah. This is some of the detection robot on ground.
Ah.
Okay.
And I see.
We have some detection on the air. We have something on the ground.
I see.
Okay.
And they can use also to save people.
Also, definitely.
When there's natural
for
disasters.
The rescue. Yes.
I see.
Okay.
Wow. We're going to have a blast. A lot of things to explore today.
Okay. Great. Robot will become next generation intelligence terminal or smart terminal. At the beginning, the personal computer, like the smart terminal for everyone. After 10, 15 years, in the smartphone, right, like iPhone, right, become the smart terminal for everyone. And in next 10 years, I predict robot will become next generation terminal for everybody.
Over there, is that he or she?
She. Her name is Yoby.
Okay.
It means your baby.
What can she do?
She can chat, she can dance, she can give order to housework.
Wow, look at that. Oh, she moves right now. That's graceful.
Yes.
Look at that. The challenge for the job market.
Okay. Yeah.
One robot is taking away the jobs of several, some say.
Yes. Robot indeed will eliminate or reduce some of the human being the job, but at the same time, robot will be create new job.
Like what?
For example, if we do the robot, right, we need develop some of the core components, develop some of the hand. Also, we develop some of the artificial intelligence software. We develop some of the chip. A lot of new things come out, like the people to take it like their job.
But that can also be done by new robots.
Yeah, you're right. So this is why I think that the second thing for the people, if you want to adapt to this new environment, new situation, you need to learn. This is why we started one called the Robot Speak.
But it's already too little, too late.
Job will be reduced by robot, right? At the same time, people need to adapt to this new situation, need to learn. That's like all the both in the process.
The other thing, of course, Dr. Gunn, is the risks that might be involved
Yes.
in using the robots.
Robot is developed by human being. We need to do some friendly robot from right now. In the future, if some robot hurt human being, we need to prepare some good technology to overcome that at this from now on. Very, very important is safety. That's the first priority right now and the first priority for the future.
And that is Dr. Gunn over there. But of course, you know, talking to him is one thing. Interacting with the robot itself is another thing. That's why I decided to talk to the little robot, Yoby. That's a she, as they say. It's fun talking to her, and it's lovely to find out what she is capable of. Take a look.
Yoby 是北京的，北京欢迎你，
谢谢。
真客气。
哦，真美。你有男朋友吗？
这个问题让Yoby很尴尬啊。
不会吧？
是真的，不骗你，骗你是小狗，汪汪汪呀！
你真逗，Yoby。
嘻嘻，其实我也这么觉得啦。
真棒你。
实在承受不住你一直的夸奖呀。
好，我不夸奖你了啊。你最喜欢哪个电影？
喜欢的太多，不好说啊。
举个例子嘛。
是你给我举例子哇。
加勒比海盗，好看吗？
这个要看你喜欢什么类型的片子了。如果你喜欢带点科幻，带点另类英雄主义。
啊，我喜欢。
我喜欢广交朋友。
我也是。Yoby，我想成为你的朋友，可以吗？
我的朋友就是你啊！你把我带走了呀。
好，我可以把你带走吗？
可以呀，快来带我呀。
走吧。Oh, the lovely Yoby. She is even more talkative than the TV host. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, visit our website or try to find us World Inside CGTN in your search engine. Check out our YouTube channel as well. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Inside with Tian Wei team, thanks for watching. Tune in again tomorrow for insights across China and around the world. Good night.